prayer concerns you'd like to share? Start with you. We have a praise for the way things went last during all the commencements and everything. It was just absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. Appreciate everybody. John McGovern, would you lead somebody in prayer, please?
Heavenly Father, we thank you so much that you love us. Thank you for shining your face and blessing on us and demonstrating your grace to us in so many ways. We thank you for the blessing that we all have of being part of this great institution. Father, we pray that we might be able to glorify you, not just as a corporate institution, but also as individuals who are leading students toward the Great Commission. In Jesus' name, amen.
We had a wonderful Board of Trustees meeting. This is probably the busiest board meeting we have because we do the budget and the comprehensive university plan as well as a lot of other things. So it's quite jam-packed. Throw in the two commencements and the staff faculty banquet, and it makes for a pretty interesting 3 days. But it's really good, and I kind of enjoy it. Let me read you some of my remarks from the report that I gave the Board of Trustees. They get pages and pages of updates on the university, but I always try to give them a little context of where we are and where the institution is. Then I'll go into the things, the recommendations that were approved, and then we'll have time for Q&A if you have anything on this or anything else that you'd like to ask about. Change is widespread. Economic change, political change, social change. It's difficult to be unaffected by at least some of the changes coursing through our world today. In such an environment, being nimble is constantly on our minds at CBU. While the uncertainty of the last few years has indeed been unsettling, CBU has managed to experience tremendous growth. Fall 2009 enrollment was 4,105. And the enrollment funnel indicates that it should exceed 6,000 in fall 2012. As an enrollment-driven university, this is good news. CBU's ongoing challenge is providing appropriate and timely capacity, instructional capacity, parking capacity, housing, feeding, and student activity capacity. While CBU does not have the luxury of building excess capacity to be filled in the future, a lack of capacity limits enrollment growth, which happened between 1997 and 2002. In 2003, the Yeager Center came online, and the university has purchased, built, or remodeled since on a just-in-time basis. Some of you might dispute whether in August, the 56,000 square foot business building will open, and a few months later, the 48,000 plus square foot recreation center will open in Lancer Plaza. We're also working on the next projects, which include new academic space for nursing, allied health, and engineering, as well as a large parking garage and an arena. If these all were to come online in the next few years, it wouldn't be too soon. CBU is becoming a key local and regional asset. Some programs are becoming known nationally. Globally, CBU is positioning to be an impact player. To enhance our global footprint, the board was asked to approve a new position, Vice President for Global Initiatives, and they did approve it. The higher education market is increasingly global, and CBU seeks to play in that space. Already, CBU has multiple long-standing agreements with universities around the world. We will send some 500 faculty, staff, and students overseas this year. We graduated 12 students from Rwanda, and the Prime Minister of Rwanda served as our commencement speaker on Saturday, with all the attendant security befitting a top government official. I believe the number was somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 when you counted our folks, RPD, Secret Service, Rwandan what security, and others. There was a SWAT team here on the roof of the James building. If you were an eagle eye, you saw that. And a lot of people who seemed to be in suits and humorless. White wire running down their neck and seemed to enjoy talking to their wrist. I don't know, but good. Back to this. We are putting in place the conditions for success to be a global impact player. Closer to home, on April 16, 2012, CBU accepted management responsibility for Talkeets Pines Conference Center in Idlewild, California. There are two ways to pronounce that word, we are told. The official language from the Native Americans is Talkeets. All the natives up there say Paquits. So, Talkeets, Paquits, tomato, Talkeets, I guess, whatever. It is located approximately 1 hour and 15 minutes from campus, and the elevation is 6,000 feet above sea level. The currents of change are swirling about us, and we are attempting to nimbly navigate these obstacles. But we remain resolutely focused on building a premier, comprehensive Christian university impacting the world for Christ. So that we talked about some of these items and other things as well, about what's going on generally. I also have been serving for about 1.5 years on the NICU Accountability Committee. I think I mentioned this to you before. It's a group of presidents from around the country. NICU is the National Association of Independent Colleges and Universities. It's our membership is non-public institutions and non-for-profits. So it's quite an eclectic group, and we basically are used by the folks in Washington, D.C. who lobby on our behalf to kind of give us here's what's coming down the pipe, how is this going to be received or play out on the campus level, are there any things that, to use a wrestling term, that you're willing to go to the mat about? And or is there ways that we can change words or try to get language and legislation in that? It's a very difficult time with the Department of Education right now. It was difficult with the last administration. Margaret Spelling was somebody who really didn't have an educational background, and almost at all, and had very certain ideas about how things should do. Basically, the approach at the higher ed level, since No Child Left Behind was such a success in K through 12, they believe this. They're trying to implement that at the university level. One of the things we understand that made the former administration happy, Mark Spelling, was that Arnie Duncan, whose background is in K through 12 in Chicago, not higher ed at all. He is elated to try to continue that effort to make higher education modeled after the successful No Child Left Behind, and they're upping the ante with things like Race to the Top. You may have heard of Race to the Top, which is the brilliant idea of just taking part of several billions of dollars or whatever, and then having a competition of the schools to compete. Feeling like a seal here, you know. I mean, they really don't understand a lot of the nuance and things. And so a lot of things are focused towards a test. They talk a lot about efficiency and not a whole lot of talk about quality. And then we get a lot of mixed signals back and forth. There's all this money that comes. Really, they overdid the Pell Grant money, frankly, and they allowed too much the way it was dispersed. It just shot up, almost doubled, or maybe it did double in a very short period of time. Now they've kind of seen some errors in their ways, I think, a little bit maybe, and now we're being told, scolded by the president on college campuses, that if we don't get the cost under control, you know, bad things are going to happen. What's not mentioned is the unprecedented number of unfunded mandates that are just coming like an avalanche at us, and we're having to do reporting and, you know, do all these things that require money and that are in response to this and that. There's not really this organized thing. A terrible shooting happens at Virginia Tech, so we have a whole nother area growing up about notifications and penalties and time frames and speakers and you know, tech. I mean, it just goes on and on and on with no idea of what's the cost of all of these things to do that. So a lot of those things are actually speeding up right now, and it seems to be a very interesting way of helping us keep our costs down, you know. But anyway, it's good for me to be on that committee. I joke that when I go to it twice a year. One of those is always in DC, quite an interesting place now. And you kind of feel like getting in the fetal position for about 3 days after you go, and then you're ready to kind of move on with life. It's really a lot of interesting swirls going. Another challenge that was discussed at some length is this whole new movement of schools like MITx, Stanford, and some of the others to give their courses away free on the internet worldwide. And Harvard has just invested $60 million to catch up with that, and now a number of name institutions, both public and private, are rushing to do this. And that's going to be interesting to see what all that means for higher education. And another movement that is coming is the badges movement, if you've heard about the badges. This comes from really two sources. One is from the gaming world. I'm not a gamer. One of my sons is. I don't really understand it, but evidently, if you get higher levels, you're at a certain, you get a badge or something. And the other one, and so if you're competing at this, then you're at this badge level, and it's a thing. The other one is from like the Boy Scouts. I'm an Eagle Scout, and the Eagle, you know, to get your Eagle, you got 21 merit badges, and so you pick which things you're going to do. At some proficiency level, you get a merit badge. You know, canoeing, life saving, camping, and so forth. So that movement is beginning to come in. The idea that you know, working with employers so that you just find out what is the skill set the employer needs, you get your badges and so forth. So a lot of currents coming in. I mentioned that things globally are really, the barriers are coming down as far as those things. And so a lot of different currents swirling about us out there. So it's, we're trying to, again, be nimble, look at who we are, what we are, and how we are key players in this information, knowledge industry that we're in, and who to partner with, and how we make it through with all this and adding value. So it's a very interesting time to be in higher education. But I would say this: other industries are having a lot of the same types of things. And it's not just our industries. If you've kept up with the political world, what's going on in different parts of the world, Russia, France, Greece, different places, there's lots of changes and, you know, different movements. And it seems a little bit what's happening is that in so many different areas of life, the middle is being hollowed out. And you're sort of getting, whether it's political, like in France, you know, the winners were either people on the far left or the far right. And so that's not a really good sign. That's a prelude to division and maybe even over conflict. So the people in the middle are you know, having a hard time occupying and staying there. You're also seeing like the middle class being hollowed out in a lot of places. A very small group of people will get wealthier or even wealthier when Facebook does its IPO. And if you have Apple stock, you know, some might have bought it at $15 or $30, and now it's $600. Wouldn't it be great if it went to $900? Well, I don't have any of it, you know. But so a lot of people don't have it. And so there's all this talk about disrupting industries, but we're not really talking about, you know, or at least in a civil way, how do we keep the ecosystem going, you know? So that there's a lot of interesting times that are coming down. Okay, let's get to, are you totally into my world? So let me go over what the board approved, and we can have some Q&A. From Academic Affairs, we got a number of items. All of the new majors were approved. I'm just going to go down through there. New majors in applied statistical analysis, applied statistics, environmental science, nutrition and dietetics. A new 5-year master's degree in architecture was approved in concept as asked, as well as a new major in architecture, BA, approved in concept. Specialization in leadership and adult education for the MA in education program. Specialization in leadership and organizational studies for the MA education program. International health major, public relations major, computer information technology major, and education with a specialization in educational leadership. And then there was a number, all the faculty who were presented for promotion from assistant to associate were approved. One, Alex Chediak, promoted from associate to full professor. And then all the faculty who were up for tenure were granted, and the faculty who were up for tenure continuation, that was also granted to each of them as well. The Board Development Committee, we made a change, or get a little more flexibility on the board meetings. The January board meeting has been the third Friday in January. Just so you know the dates, here's what it reads. The schedule for board meetings is the third Friday in January, the Friday before the first Saturday in May, and the last Friday in September. So there's a reason for all that. So we're adding, on the one in January, is the second or third Friday in January. The reason for this, as we're making the transition into NCAA Division II, the NCAA really requires that the president and about 4 or 5 other folks, the FAR, the faculty athletic representative, athletic director, and several other people, attend the annual meeting. We haven't had a problem, but they're not consistently on the same week. So there's a little movement. Most of the time they're in the second week, but they do sometimes move to the third week. So this allows us the flexibility to sort of like if you're skiing or something, you know, when they go, we go, you know. You just kind of draft behind them or beside them. So and we have the dates through 2019, so they approved that was good to do that. And then the next motion was the actual dates in January from 13 through 2019. So those were all approved. So there'll be a few weeks where we come back in January and we're almost immediately going into board meeting. In fact, one of the early ones will be January the 8th in 2016. So really early. On the Business Affairs Committee, board approved receiving the single audit report for the fiscal year ending last year as prepared by the City Lloyd and Stutzman in compliance with Board Policy 5.1.1. This dealt with student aid compliance. Also, they approved the Comprehensive University Plan dated spring 2012. And that's really the document that drives the institution forward. And then once you approve the strategic plan, then you need the funding to do that. And so the next item is the budget for FY 2013. They approved an operating budget of $172,457,278 as presented by the University Administration. This budget supports the goals and objectives identified in the CUP, the Comprehensive University Plan. The FY13 budget attempts to align the resources with the strategic goals found in the 5 strategic plans of the CUP. So that was done. It's a pretty significant increase over the current year budget. It's a $29 million increase over the $143 million budget we currently operate under. Also, that the revised section 2.19 and 2.19.1 of the CBU Employee Handbook, which deals with rest and meal periods. So this was some technical language that we updated there. Let's see. Institutional Advancement Committee didn't have any recommendations this board meeting. Student Services, the health insurance fees for FY13 were approved, and they're basically, there's several options, and they all look like they're $725 per semester, or for the spring summer is together. So these are going up quite a bit, and I believe that Ken Davis reported that because of the new healthcare thing going into effect, it affects most Americans in 2014. Colleges are affected, were affected April the 1st, I believe, of this year. So we're kind of the guinea pigs in this thing. And the rates were so high, or married students, right, that we just didn't even list them. Grad students, we just didn't even list them. These used to be much smaller than they are today, and you start thinking about, I think I remember when this even became a requirement, which is again one of those unfunded mandates. I believe it was back in the 80s, 80s or 90s, I can't remember when, and they came up with this idea that undergraduate college students had to have insurance, and that the colleges they attended had to provide the insurance and collect the money, sign them up. I mean, it was one of the first times that I really experienced this, like, why? I mean, it's not a bad thing to do, but boy, we're really doing the work for a lot of other people, and why these folks and not others? And so from that point on, you know, we had to do all this work and not get reimbursed for it, and be the gatekeeper for it. And it's a lot of administration. And I think there are penalties if you don't do it. So, you know, it's high stakes too. So now, this is the cost of, what are the differences? So here's how they handled it. The insurance business realized that most of these undergraduates were healthy, and they weren't likely to need to use it. And so they designed their response, the industry, basically, insurance industry, basically came up with a low-cost thing with a high deductible and not many benefits, but it met the standard. And most people were kind of happy with it because, and it really was designed for people who weren't covered by their parents. Most students were covered by their parents. But it kind of worked until this year. And no, seriously, because the new law requires that everybody have the same coverage. Well, I get it in general, but you take a student who is struggling, the ones this hits hardest are people who really come from low income, and they need the Pell Grant, they need everything they can get just to make it work. You know, the Pell Grant, the Cal Grant, all the student loans and everything. And now there's this huge increase in this insurance premium that they have to pay that many of them will not need to use. But they can't enroll in school. We have to be, again, the gatekeeper, and it even causes, it's just a really interesting situation to put universities in, especially the folks who are on the front line trying to make it work. Here's just another brick in the wall that makes it tough to get over. So there's that. Also from Student Services, the student handbook was updated, an addition under general community expectations. It says possessing, using, or being under the influence of tobacco products, or, and here's what's added, other substances that are smoked, inhaled, to produce any effect, that's what was added, on university premises or at university-sponsored or supervised activities. The background is this. Synthetic tobacco has become popular in our culture. So this motion will allow for its ban on campus of synthetic tobacco. Another one, under General Community Expectations Student Handbook, deals with stalking. Stalking of another person or group. Stalking is harassing or threatening another person to the point where that individual fears for his or her safety or the safety of his or her family. Stalking can occur in various forms, including but not limited to in-person and via electronic means, cyber stalking and cyberbullying. The background here is that this will allow CBU to address cyber stalking and cyberbullying that may happen within our community, on our campus, our CBU community. Another one, this one's under judicial action, the student handbook. And this one, I won't read the whole thing, it's a little long, but if an accused student, this is for our own internal judicial student issues. If an accused student fails to appear at a scheduled hearing, the student will be deemed to have waived his or her hearing, and the dean of students may render a decision upon his or her matter in their absence. The background is that students at times have missed judicial hearings with the hopes that the judicial action will be delayed or forgotten. So, not a part of it. And then another one was that dealt with judicial action that the university council may attend hearings. Won't attend all of them, but occasionally it's prudent for the university to have somebody there just to make sure that things are done correctly and all that. From the executive committee, the university was authorized to hire a vice president for global initiatives. The background is this: CBU has developed a strong and growing program of global initiatives which help fulfill the Great Commission. This position will enable the university to consolidate supervision of existing efforts and increase preparation for an educational environment extending beyond national boundaries and is driven by the demand of a global marketplace. Also, they approved the establishment of a goal for themselves this year of raising another $50,000 to the endowment for the trustees, the distinguished professor, distinguished scholar. Currently that corpus is a little over $78,000. And then lastly, they approved honorary degree, Doctor of Laws, for the Prime Minister, who was our commencement speaker on Saturday. Those are the things that were approved. We're having a pretty good year financially. We will finish, we put the $5 million cash reserve in there, and this is the third year, so that there's at least $15 million in that reserve, which is good. But when you get to a $172 million budget, the burn rate on that per month, if you divide 172 by 12, it's a lot per month. So it's a good sum, but it's also not a huge sum, especially when you consider that our money doesn't come in at the same flow each month of the year. The summers are not as robust as some of the other months might be, like September, October, January, February would be very robust. So, but this helps us have a cushion and that type of thing. Progress. I think I mentioned the buildings. They're come on. Any other questions, updates, or anything? Yes, sir.
The conference center is the
Hawkins.
Yeah, that one. What are we using that for?
That is, it's about 20-something acres up there. The capacity is around 165 plus or minus. We're taking it over. We're managing it now. We're looking to see how we might utilize that in our programming here and to the greater community. This camp, I think, goes back to 1931, and the Wycliffe Bible translators really are the ones who have done a lot with this camp. I think they still use it a lot. There's I don't know how many churches use this thing. It's well over 100, or is it hundreds maybe, that use this on short term. So we're looking at how CBU is going to be able to utilize this. it's one of those things that it's really having some tough financial problems. Mariners Church had taken it over from Wycliffe about 3 years ago. The associate pastor that was doing that has decided to start a new church in Laguna Beach. Mariners is in Newport Beach, I think. And so they wanted somebody who, they want to keep it in Christian hands. And so we're working with that. This was not something we saw. It was presented to us. So we are now working on the adoption papers and all that, foster care, I don't know what it is. We're working through how to make this thing be sustainable. Any other questions or comments? Thank you so much for the work you do. I sincerely appreciate it. I see each other a lot and have a lot of time to just chat, but it takes a lot of talented, committed, passionate people to make an organization like this really hum. And I tell you, it was humming this past Friday and Saturday, and people noticed. We had Eric, is one of the fellows from Rwanda. He's got a joint appointment between the government of Rwanda and Saddleback Church. He was there with his wife, and he coordinates a lot of these things. At the reception, he was just asking a ton of questions about how we did this, because he does a lot of events over there. I think his wife couldn't believe at first that that wasn't a permanent stadium, that no, this is really just a temporary setup, And they're asking a lot of questions about how we did this and how we did, noticing things, how efficient they were, how quickly we were able to graduate such a large number where it takes them a lot more time to do less. And so those were kind of nice, but and his term was flawless. That CBU was a flawless, and I think that's a wonderful. Somebody might have stumbled over a teleprompter here or there, but be that as it may. You have to remember when you're up there, everybody sees. But it really went well, and I tell you, people were really talking about it. Brought a lot of smiles to people's faces. And there was probably over 10,000 people there Saturday, 4,000 to 5,000 on Friday night, and just pulling off that 320-something banquet the night before, final award meetings going on, and all the other things. What a great group of folks to be able to just keep it going. Now we go right into the next thing. We've got these building projects that are coming online just in time. And we hope the students are here to utilize them. Well, thank you so much. That's all I got.